How's it going, everyone? So before we dive into the episode, I really want to say thank you to everyone that is listening in, that's tuning in, that's enjoying this content and getting value from it. I really love that. That's why I do it. But there's a huge amount of you that are listening that are not subscribed, not following the podcast. And I really want to encourage you to please follow and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are listening or viewing this on. It really helps out the podcast. It helps out the algorithm. It helps more people hear this content that you already find helpful and that they hopefully will as well. So if you go ahead and subscribe or follow the podcast on any platform that you're listening on, and please share it with your friends, that'll be great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Let's get into the episode. How's it going, Chris? It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Joe, great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, I start everyone off with telling their background, right? And the reason why I do that is because there's a portion of my audience that is trying to make that jump into IT or security for the very first time. I remember when I was making that jump, and all that I needed to hear was that someone else did it from a similar background. And
Yeah.
so that I could tell myself, like, hey, this is possible. This is something that I can actually go down and achieve. So what's your story? What made you interested in IT? What made you, go down this path?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had a pretty non-traditional, circuitous route to cybersecurity, certainly, and even IT. I graduated from Colorado State University with an accounting degree. I had, wisely chosen to get a sort of a concentration minor in accounting information systems. And that was, I'd say, one of the a few good shorts I made in college. But that ended up serving me well. And I managed to get done at Price Waterhouse. There's a pretty good story behind that. But got into a really good firm. And they kind of, I got there because of that concentration. They needed somebody to help them deploy client server technology, replace the mainframe application. They said, hey, you're accounting, you got some systems, we'll train you and see if you can do this. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. So did that for about a year. So I got trained out, figured stuff out quick and learned on the job. And then actually I went back to the financial auditor for a year. Found out that wasn't really all that appealing to me, and then learned about their IT audit practice and began pursued that, and that kind of thing got me more into the audit side and more the IT side, and that then kind of really propelled me more along the IT and cybersecurity path, and began to build some softwares and tooling to try to automate things that I wanted to automate, and I had a knack for that as well on the software side, and I think just kind of some of those early experiences, just being asked to go learn, figure stuff out, and being presented with the opportunity to go try hand to technology is what really shaped my career.
Hmm. That's really fascinating. When you were getting your degree, did you see that specialty or that focus of information systems as the future? Did you see that and say, I could see, computers and IT systems becoming a thing in the future? I'm going to go down this route, or was it kind of more happenstance?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of both. I mean, I'm kind of I was definitely a high leverager, technology, say around computers and things like that when I was younger. So I was very more advanced tinkerer than most. And I chose accounting because honestly I was too lazy to go do all the hard work in engineering. That was that. I started at CSU and as an engineering major, and then I got into like Calc 2 and 3. It's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot of work. I'm going to have to get to class and study. And instead I went the accounting path. So I get dog doing that. I love it. But I did this kind of, I think, saw a little bit of the writing on the wall in terms of systems was going to be, and technology was going to be driving the future, economy and the future of business. And I did make a good choice to go pursue that concentration for that reason. And because I had to kind of take care of my technology.
Oh, yeah. When I was in college, I had a friend that went down the engineering path. I think it was like the mechanical engineering path, and he would talk to me about like the math classes and the physics classes that he'd have to take, and like, man, like I enjoy Calc 1, but I don't know if I enjoy like, 5 steps above that. It's an insane amount of work. And I feel like it's really hard to kind of figure out what that work is going to be like until you get into it. Uh, but it's an insane amount of work, that you're nonstop studying.
You are, yes. It's a different level of exercise and discipline, especially when the schools, at least CSU, they put they kind of weed out the weak-hearted by having physics at 8 in the morning. And so if you're not willing to get up at 8 in the morning and go do physics, you probably shouldn't be pursuing engineering. And so that did also help to weed me out.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking back.
I can my boys watch this episode. It's like I'm said too much.
Yeah, thinking back, that is interesting. All those hard classes were pretty early in the morning too for my program. I tried to go pre-med at first, right? So you have to take like chemistry and physics and you
Yeah.
know calculus and all those fun classes, and all the hard ones were in the morning. It seemed like 8 a.m., 7 a.m. There was no breaks. I think that helped. That definitely helped weed me out. Now that you bring that up, I think that that definitely helped.
I think it's deliberate. It's probably smart, right? It's kind of like, look, if you're not willing, now to go do this, yeah, like 12 more years of this, so buckle up.
Right. Yeah. If you're not willing to do it now, then you're definitely not going to be willing to do the hard stuff when we actually get to it.
Yeah, that's
That makes
right.
a lot of sense. Did you kind of, talk to me about that opportunity of being handed, new things to figure out, right? Were you nervous? Were you going through imposter syndrome at the time? Because I remember when I was, handed new things to figure out for myself, I felt like I was, an imposter. Surely in this project they're going to figure out I'm not the person that they should have hired, and I'm going to be shown the door and things like that, right? Did you go through something similar or no?
Yes, in multiple different ways. But for sure. I mean, we just started. I mean, I was showing up as when you work for a firm like Price Waterhouse, people, the expectations are pretty high. And I think it's like I kind of had an interesting path in there. And so I had to kind of overcome that through my right belonged, a firm like that. And so I had a bit of, I say, insecurity or imposter syndrome for a while until I kind of got my feet underneath it. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I really loved about that experience, and some of this was because the field was very new, like, IT audit, EDP audit, IT security. It was a version field. I'm an IT audit. There really wasn't internet security at that time. I was kind of right there when IT audit was becoming internet security, and corporate America was connecting their networks to the internet, or thinking about doing that, trying to figure out is this a good idea or not. Hey, there's a thing called a firewall. Should we get a firewall? Yeah, so I was kind of there at that time, and so I was often asked to go in and assess things or figure stuff out. Well, you need to go do a database security assessment or application security assessment or a general controls review. And like, here's your list of things to go look at. That someone else put down before you, and there's some structure there, or we don't have that yet, and go to Barnes and Nobles and go buy a book and figure it out, and show up the next day as a Oracle audit expert. And so I have to go do those things and go on the fly, read, learn, and try to go show up with some credibility. But people who are doing things like Oracle DBAs as that was their job and profession. So it was a lot of pressure. Luckily, I guess I was pretty good at picking things up pretty quickly and synthesizing knowledge, and I think luckily had a good talent for it. But yeah, there's a lot of times it was nerve wracking going in, just not knowing if somebody's just gonna call my bluff and just be like, "Hey, kid, you really don't know what you're talking about," and it's pretty clear. let me school you up. But yeah, often even when they knew that, a lot of people are professional. They kind of know like, yeah, you're still figuring stuff out yourself, and you're there to do the job. So there's also some grace given.
Hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting skill to have and develop, right? Is being you're being paid for to be the SME, but you're not really the SME,
Yeah,
and you're trying to figure things out, right? And you can kind of get by with using the right words, using the right terminology and whatnot, right? But when it comes to hands-on keyboard technical perspective, you may need a little bit of assistance and whatnot. And it's uh it's an interesting environment, right? Because I remember when I was starting to go, on client calls to different federal agencies. I mean, I was early on in my career. I didn't know what I didn't even know. Trying to be the SME in that environment. I mean, you have the guy wrote the vulnerability scan software that you're using right there at the desk, and you're saying, contradicting things, and it's um it's definitely a learning experience. Do you look back at those skills that learned working under that pressure, and do you think that it benefits you now? How has it benefited you or changed your mentality towards, adverse conditions and new problems that are coming up in the modern world within your new, company and role?
yeah. I mean, it definitely saved me. I think it helped instill in me high self-efficacy. Kind of notion that I just have high belief that I can figure stuff out, get stuff done. And so I was forced to do that, and I did it. I think just generally speaking, I think for people, I think that who are kind of in that early in their career, I think just that philosophy of go figure it out. I mean, there's so much. I mean, geez, it's ChatGPT, right? I mean, there's never been a resource of knowledge, intelligence, you know, like there is today. Um, and so be curious, go learn, figure stuff out. Just be willing to just go out there and sometimes take a little bit of risk as well. Can push the envelope. But yeah, for me, I think that there's still a lot of high self-efficacy, and also just the notion of once I figured out, I figured out. Like, I've been a lifelong learner in my profession through all those other jobs that I had. I was always being pushed forward in roles I wasn't really qualified yet to do, and always gaining confidence. And the same thing. Then when I found the logarithm, and that was every single year being pushed to grow and to scale and to pick up new skills, whether the technical side or leadership side, managerial side, strategy. It was just you constantly having to figure stuff out. Now I'm doing that same thing in Radicl as well, and it's fun. It's challenging, stressful at times. It's not you're not just doing things and do every day, and some great stress. And some days that stress gets to me more than others, but I'm always glad that I'm continue to grow and learn.
So talk to me about Radicl. What do you guys focus on? What's the area of expertise within the security, world?
Yeah, with Radicl, we're really focused on fundamentally we want to help secure the defense industrial base and U.S. critical infrastructure. Um, that's the fundamental goal. That's the mission. And for us, we're going about that by trying to secure the SMB segment. Say companies under 500 employees. These companies that serve defense supply chains, serve critical infrastructure, they are being actively targeted by nation state threats, APTs. I believe a lot of them are likely, actively compromised. And because this is nation state espionage, it's also cyber warfare, and it's posturing and it's preparing for future conflicts. And these companies they're involved in it, and they don't have they typically have not had the defensive arsenal and capability set to actually defend themselves against that classic adversary due to cost and complexity. So we're trying to bring, I'd say very advanced, more like enterprise, big bank grade, cyber security defenses to the segment. And so for us, that is, kind of managing their attack surface, shrinking it across time, and then it's also handling their threat detection and its responsibilities, making sure that press don't go unseen when they are seen. They can investigate, and also any damage is responded to, very, very, very quickly, and trying to do all of that in a way that's easy for them to consume and at a price point that they can actually afford to pay.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area because it's often not even looked at, not even thought about. This these really small, tiny companies that don't have the budget to pay for, a solution like CrowdStrike or Splunk, right, or whatever it might be. How are they protecting themselves? Because they may be a small business and they have one or two government contracts, and those one or two government contracts might be designing, the radar system for a nuclear sub. It's interesting what the government will trust with smaller businesses, to do for them. And it makes sense why they do it, right? You kind of want to disperse out these different systems and have different manufacturers and different R&D processes and whatnot. Um, but at the same time, it does open you up to risk because I remember actually reading an article where the FBI identified that a foreign adversary was infiltrating the power grid via a small business. It was literally this guy and his wife, owned and ran this business, and he would go out and work on the power grid at a substation that was, nearby his place of residence, even, right? It's in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere, like Montana or something like that, right? And they identified that the country's power grid was being infiltrated by this small business. Well, this guy doesn't know anything about cybersecurity. Like when the FBI showed up at his door, he was confused as to, like, how is this even possible? Like I bought a laptop from Dell. It was a new laptop. I don't know what to tell you. I hook it up. Like, this is what I do. And, he couldn't even wrap his head around what it was that was going on. And so it's a sector of the market that, in my opinion, is often overlooked, in terms of cybersecurity, but it's a place where we're probably the most vulnerable.
Agreed. Yeah, I've been concerned about that for a long time, and that's been passion of mine professionally. That's it was also the impetus for starting Logarithm as well. Kind of that same concern. But yeah, it's I say it's overlooked. It is overlooked. I think it's overlooked in terms of like the vendor side, because the challenge with this market is it's hard to make money there, right? And that's for us the fundamental challenge that we have. I think we can do it because technology is evolving in a way where we can get to a solution and that can be affordable and also high quality, just based upon cloud and AI and just the modern tech situation. But in the past, that hasn't been possible. So from the vendor perspective, they have often been overlooked. The government is not been overlooked, and they've been very concerned for a while. They passed various clauses, DFARS clauses, somebody falling into key one where they're supposed to comply with the standard 171, which is a pretty rigorous compliance framework. The challenge has been there's not been enforcement of it, and there's self-reporting. And companies can self-assess every 3 years and pose a score. A score's not necessarily really evaluated in terms of their ability to get contracts currently. And so there isn't a economic incentive to invest in cybersecurity. There hasn't been. One is coming with the cybersecurity maturity model certification process, where now will actually be a compliance methodology that will have teeth and independent third-party assessments, and that will hopefully level the playing field so that all companies need to invest the appropriate resources to actually be secure if they're handling what's called controlled and classified information, or CUI, which is the near sensitive stuff that the government wants to make sure gets protected. So there's been focus on it. It's just the challenge has been government moves slowly. There's no enforcement model, And these are small companies. They got businesses to run, they've got employees to pay, and they're already working on narrow margins. And so they can't justify to spend in cybersecurity because there's no economic benefit. And others could just say, I'm not going to spend it, and therefore I'll underbid you on price, right? So what CEO is going to say, I'm going to allocate 5% of my budget to cybersecurity when CEO B's not going to do that, or competitors. Now everything I do is more expensive than that. And so it's kind of an economic model that is, I think, broken right now, that is ultimately driving the underspend and underdelivery cyber in the segment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was there an experience, previously in your career that, kind of opened you up to this whole problem within the sector?
Well, I mean, mostly it's, I'm a patriot. I never served myself in the military, but my grandfather served, my dad served, and I love our country. The country's not perfect. We got things to go, work on, as does every nation. But I believe it's a great nation, and wants to be protected. And so that's really the root of it. It's me wanting to help serve my nation, and through the skills that I have, the talents that God's given me.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? Because it's fascinating because, at one point in time, right, I wanted to go into like the federal sector and work for different agencies and whatnot. Right? It never panned out for me for one reason or another, right? Like there's a million reasons why you can be disqualified
Yeah.
from these processes, and it was always so very frustrating to me, right? Because I was told at one point in time, oh, you're too young, you got to wait until you're 30, right? And my response was, you do understand that, like, I'm literally willing to hop on a plane to go to Afghanistan right now. Like,
Yeah.
right now. If you tell me where to show up, I'll go.
Yeah.
But when I'm 30, I'll probably have kids. I'll probably be married. There's no way I'm hopping on that plane. Right? Use me now.
Right.
It never really panned out for one reason or another, probably for the better, I guess. Right?
Yep.
But it's interesting for me to see how people, get into this world, right? Because you're kind of in a quasi space where you're kind of, one foot in one world, one foot in the other world, and you're trying to help both worlds, I guess.
Yeah, and indeed, I think people in cybersecurity, generally, I mean, it's kind of it's cops versus robbers a little bit, right? It's kind of good guys versus bad guys, and so I think a lot of us in this field, we're in it because we want to help protect and find a way to give back, because there are adversaries and threats out there that they're seeking that you are, whether that's at a nation state level, or it's ransomware that might jeopardize, a family run business that's been around for 100 years, and wipe out 10, 20, or 100 employees, their paychecks. None of that's good. And so I think a lot of folks in this industry care about that and want to just kind of, get in the way of those threats.
How are you able to create a solution that is cost effective for these smaller businesses to use, that provides these advanced capabilities? The
Yeah.
reason why I ask is because I'm over here, I'm looking at my CrowdStrike renewal,
Right.
and I mean, it's an arm and a leg, right? And they
Yeah.
offer similar stuff, but it's not geared towards smaller businesses. I
Yeah.
remember when I was working for a much smaller company, somewhere around 50 people, and we had government contracts. I guess very naively, approached my VP saying, "Hey, we should get something like CrowdStrike on our machines and whatnot." And he looked at the pricing. He's like, "Hey, this is like double our IT budget. Like we can't do this."
Yeah. And that is a fundamental challenge. So you part of it is we are CrowdStrike partners. We work with CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike has programs that that align for the SMBs, so that that helps us out, helps the customers out. But I think, I think in terms of like this particular segment, it starts with one, yes, is making it easy. The ads can be easy to adopt, rapid to adopt. Um, and part of that is, we can't assume that they've got a bunch of people on their team who want to spend time doing security or even IT. And so we got to take it off their plate, and that's a big part of what we've built. And so we built a platform that allows us to become seamlessly their security operations team as well as their compliance operations team. So we have a compliance side as well. And so through our platform, we are able to to drive their attack surface management process, right? So we are scanning for vulnerabilities on their behalf, identifying configuration weaknesses. We're doing security awareness training. We're just delivering all of that to them through our platform, and I'm helping them, just over time on the ASM side, shrink that attack surface, where all they have to do is just patch the things we tell them to patch across time. And we can dole that out in bite-sized chunks, so we're not overwhelming them. On the threat side, we're the ones, that are monitoring anything that CrowdStrike would tell us about. We're also pulling other data from sources like O365 or Google Workspace and running our own detection analytics against it. If we see something, we triage it, we investigate. If there's an incident, we then manage the response process. We pull them the customer again if we need to through our platform by tasking them to do certain things with clear guidance, right? And in SMBs, that person is being tasked often an MSP who's running their IT. And our platform allows us to task either the MSP or their internal IT, and also keep their CEO or CFO informed of everything going on. And so that's how we've approached this is kind of this platform-led delivery where we can become that team seamlessly, high transparency, where very quickly it's in place. I mean, we go and deploy, within a day, we're collecting data, we've got visibility, and we're monitoring, and we're beginning to identify vulnerabilities and beginning to work on our plan to shore those up across time. Yeah. And the reason we can do that more affordably than in the past is we know a lot about security analytics. That's my background. A lot of them. My co-founder is my brother, who was 25 there. So we know a lot of building platforms that allow us to better use data, both for detection as well as workflow automation. And so you can imagine we're building a lot in our backend platform allows us to unleash the potential of data. And also allows us to unleash the potential of AI as well to then increasingly automate things that humans have to do today. And that is more the technical side of how we get to, I'd say, hyper efficient scale that allows us to have a very affordable price point. Because ultimately, AI is taking over more and more of the things that have to be done. It had to be done historically by a human operator.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like that's probably the only way that you can really penetrate into this market and really help them out is to being able to augment a huge portion of that IT responsibility, for that company. That makes a lot of sense. Have you, out of curiosity, have you seen an increase of either attacks or type of attacks against some of these smaller companies in correlation to other world events, right? So I'm thinking of different tariffs that might be imposed on China or the Ukraine war that's going on, right? Did you see an increase of these kinds of attacks, even preliminary attacks, right? Because I ask because before Russia invaded Ukraine the second time here, months beforehand, they were attacking Ukraine and, trying to cause different havoc with different cyber attacks before an actual kinetic attack occurred.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, I say empirically that we have seen an increase in frequency. But we have certainly seen an increase, in the targeted tactics. One of the things that we do because we're defending, defense industry bases, we tie into various, intelligence channels. And we have noticed, tactics that, are emerging, that are being, used by various state actors, to target and penetrate, this class of company. We go then, hunt, for any, IOCs, for those given tactics. And so that's something we have seen, more, emergence of, more recently around some of these geopolitical events. And I think that, will only continue.
So I think one major question that the industry is facing, right, is, you know, once you've been breached or attacked in a certain way, how are you going to ensure that the attackers are out of the system? Is there a way that you could potentially walk me through how that happens? Like how you can, you know, provide some sort of clarity around that? Because that's even a difficult question for me, and I'm in the industry. A friend of mine who was a director at a company said that they were recently breached, and his first question to me was, "How do I know that they're even gone?" You know,
Yeah,
like I
right.
don't know, right? And it's a difficult question to answer.
It is, and so yeah, we are doing that. It's not always possible, but if we are able to identify certain tactic or tactic that is either successful or even unsuccessful, that we might need to manually hunt for on an occasion, we can take the learnings from actually a active incident, or a incident, and we can use we can instrument those learnings in detection rules, and CrowdStrike is a very capable detection engine on the endpoint, and so we develop our own bespoke CrowdStrike detection rules that will leverage the intelligence gained through threat hunting or incident response efforts, and we'll do the same in our own proprietary detection pipeline, which is analyzing other sources of data, take this visibility beyond the endpoint. And so that's a big part of what we strive to do whenever possible. Is we have a step in our sequence called for cognitive resiliency. And so in our kind of workflow in our virtual SOC, resiliency is where we take those learnings and we would try to put things in place that would trigger if we ever saw that same tactic, employed again, or a similar indicator emerge in the environment that might point to that threat did leave something behind. Because that's a challenge. Is these very advanced threats, if they are allowed to get in and stay in, they'll leave behind backdoors that might awaken 6 months, 9 months later, and be hard to suss out if they go live again. But if the things that we learn though can at least help us maybe find any indicator that starts to weaken, or peak or becomes active, we can see the environment.
Hmm. Are you potentially at this point with enough data, and I'm not saying that you have enough data or anything like that, right? But when you see an attack occur in an environment and you get it out of the environment and you're creating those rules, are you able to potentially even adjust the attack parameters and say, oh, okay, they might tweak it like this if they try again, or they may adjust, this thing over here, whatever it might be. Are you also making those adjustments up ahead to make future attacks even more significantly difficult for the attacker? Or maybe I'm just spitballing and right, like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, we when possible we will. I mean, so we're generally trying to detect the general tactic and patterns we might observe in data that would indicate that tactic is in use, versus a very specific IOC, which across time might change, or it might be different in a different environment. And so, but that we're trying to, those rules to try to, to build more on a tactic level, which should be broader in nature and allows to detect a similar method of attack and going forward, regardless of the environment or the specific technical details of the instance of that attack. Yeah.
That makes sense. Well, have you potentially seen different tech attributes, right, or methodologies that kind of correlate to a nation state actor? The reason why I say this, right, or ask this question is because a lot of the times when a report's release about an after action event, right, a breach happens of some situation, and they always tend to leave out the attributed nation states that they believe it came from or anything like that, right? In security, I still feel like there's different techniques that Russia would use versus the US or versus China or versus Iran. There's different methods of doing these things, and these different nations, they have different priorities and different attack methodologies, right? Like where Russia will just hack into the power grid and blatantly take over your screen and move your mouse around, right? Like they did in 2014, right? Where the US isn't known for doing that as much. They're more from the passive, gather the intelligence and then use it at a later time. Are you able to see those sorts of attributes as well to these attacks?
Yeah. I Keeson. I think the reality is, I think a nation state and really any threat actor is only going to work as hard as they need to. And so they're going to start with more highly automated attacks and tools, things that are taking advantage of commonly known weaknesses and vulnerabilities. If that doesn't work, then they're going to start to go more specific and maybe start launching some more targeted phishing or phishing TFT type campaigns to see if they can get a user make a mistake. And if that doesn't work, then they might begin to deploy more novel tactics, right? And so and this is where nation states have more wherewithal because in their nation states are in the practice of harvesting 0 days. They've got teams of very smart engineers and who will be scour through open source code repositories or take closed source systems and try to find weaknesses in those systems that can be exploited at a later point in time as a 0 day, and they hold on to those dearly. They don't want to let those go in the wild unless they absolutely have to. They only be employed against a highest value target. Because once they're used, eventually they'll be discovered. Then you can build a rule signature and detect it going forward. And so that is where the detection analytics becomes much more sophisticated and complex, and really is where things like anomaly detection come into play. When we think about how we look for signs of a threat actor in an environment, there's the things that we know to go look for because we've observed them in the past, and these things are all now chronicled in great repositories like in my attack framework, which is a fantastic resource. But there are these more novel attacks. There's also now living out the land, which is also the kind of emergent technique of a nation state or advanced threat actor. Of they're not going to use tooling or techniques that would be detected by CrowdStrike or other detection technology. They're using PowerShell, which might already exist on the system. And running and using that under credentials that they compromise through other means. And so, those things become harder to detect because they're using tools in the environment, using accounts that they've got access to, and they're blending in. And that is where anomaly detection then begins to play a role, where really the only way you can suss that out is by identifying shifts in behavior for an account, or collection of accounts tied to a user, or just in behavior, of a process on a system, or a system in general, and how it interacts with other systems. that is hard to do well without that becoming a false alarm factory. Um, but that is where we get, on a very advanced side for detection. Anomaly detection needs to play a critical role. And the challenge with anomaly detection is that you need a lot of people traditionally to do that well, because you're going to fire off a lot of alarms that somebody needs to go investigate, because the false positives anomalies currently and historically have been very high. It's hard to differentiate between an anomaly of an account, which is a user just shifting their normal behavior, to an account that is actually under the control of a threat actor. Those two things are hard to differentiate in data analytics. But and that is, for us, a big area of innovation and focus going forward is on that anomaly detection layer as we continue our roadmap on the path towards nation state threat resiliency.
Yeah, that is, it's a really challenging area, right? We're kind of moving into this place where we're getting so advanced, the defenses are becoming so advanced that the attackers are coming out with you know like things that you would just never think of as attack vectors and as methods of compromise, right? And it's always interesting for me to kind of see where this is going, and for you as an expert in the field, where do you see this evolving to, right? Where do you see potentially the threat actors evolving to counteract a anomaly detection system? And then what are the protections that could even come into play in the future of, addressing those risks?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know for sure where it's going to go, but yeah, AI is certainly going to, increasingly important role in it. From just the ability to better synthesize engineering type attacks, whether that's through through email or text or voice, or right. I mean, people are going to get phone calls soon that sound like their mom or their dad, asking them for information for help, because voices can now be stolen. An image or a video of somebody they love, in harm's way, and have to suss that out as fraud or so. We're going to see that class of attack on the social and human side of things. And then then AI is also going to be used to to accelerate the pace of finding weaknesses in software vulnerabilities, and also to exploit them from an automation perspective. And so there's just going to be an accelerant and an enablement factor across all attack vectors. And the same then needs to be seen on the defensive side as well. And I think the challenge is that the offensive side to the pace of the defensive side. And so there'll be some catching up to do on the defensive side. And honestly, that's why I've always been a huge believer in really just detection and incident response, because I just think you can never. The threat actor will always have motivation. They will typically be ahead of the defensive mechanisms that can be put in place from a prevention perspective, and you just have to be able to detect these indicators of compromise response to them, because a motivated threat will get through. And so for us, on the defensive side, I think it's going to be looking at how can the advancements in AI and machine learning help us better synthesize the data that we now have access to. There's so much information now that we can acquire about IT infrastructures and environments. How we better synthesize that to understand when we see meaningful shifts in that environment, and to pull them out with increasing accuracy. AI should play a profound role in the evolution of anomaly detection and the accuracy of anomaly detection. And it also should play a profound role in helping to guide and augment human security operators, and kind of be that security co-pilot type ability that helps them to make better, more informed decisions, or even predict and suggest the course of action to take in a given scenario or condition, and then eventually do it for them, right? And that's the ultimate place we need to get to, is that AI is actually making the end-to-end determination of that's a novel attack. that system's compromised, that account's compromised, along with the 10 others, and the AI is empowered and able to disable those accounts, influencing that system without any human being involved. That is the pace we need to get to from a defensive perspective. That's going to take years of innovation to get there, because it needs to be completely trustworthy. You can't have a autonomous agent, an entity in your environment, that is beginning to change the IT, infrastructure on the fly based on what it's observing, if you do not absolutely trust it. Because ultimately, business rules out over risk. You have to run your business. And so, miss a big goal of ours. We see ourselves as an AI platform. Ultimately, is how do we evolve the platform to the point where that AI becomes, more independently, sentient's not the right word, but more independently empowered, to take actions without a human operator being in the loop with increased frequency.
It seems like it's going the AI route on both ends, where attackers are going to be using AI to mimic someone's voice that you trust and know, to mimic you, to gain access to your accounts and things like that. And on the other hand, we have to evolve as well and develop AI to identify those other rogue AIs, right?
Yeah.
It's a interesting, you know, it's an interesting time, because we're like right at the very beginning where we're starting to see like computers versus computers in a very real, tangible way.
Yeah. It's a real problem.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I'm not, politics aside, I think there's a very strong argument now for some kind of a national digital ID system, and almost like national public key infrastructure where people's, digital identity can be verified. And we need to get ahead of this in some way, so that when I send something or my image is included, is part of a picture, part of a video, or my voice is recorded, that can be cryptographically signed in some way and be verified as actually being me. And to me, like, public, I'm beating on my, cryptographic knowledge, but, PCI infrastructure, is back, in cryptography, could have a role to play here. But, one way or another, I think if we can get on top of being able to actually verify, that, the person or entity in an image or on voice or in communication is actually who they are, it's going to be a bit of a wild and scary ride. And the security side, it's going to be hard to address.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, it's an interesting problem slash solution, right?
Yeah.
I've thought about that digital identity verification before, and as a security professional, right, it makes me nervous,
Yeah.
because then I started thinking of, okay, well, how can that be used against me? How can it be potentially stolen and impersonate me, right? Because that will shift the focus of nation states, which have unlimited resources, and if they just say, hey, we're going to break into this database no matter what, we're going to find it, we're going to get all the information from it. It's almost more of a matter of time until they do it, rather than they'll never do it, right? Eh, But at the same time, we need something like that to kind of get ahead, to provide the privacy and the identity verification of people on social media, of people over email and things like that. So it's an interesting problem. I almost feel like there's no right answer right now. At least, I don't know, maybe for myself, right? Maybe I'm too on the negative side, I guess.
It's a tough one. My views have changed. I mean, 20 years ago, I was like, no way I'd want that. I don't think I would have that kind of insider information. But I think for me is, I would fashion myself a pragmatist, and in most things. And the reality is now there is no more privacy. And so we've already lost privacy. Privacy's gone, right? I mean, it's just that it's just our information is in the hands of various companies, Google, Apple, Microsoft. They know a ton about us. And then there's the dark web and what's out there about us. And so that, the notion of privacy, I don't think it's real anymore anyway. And we also have the protections, the benefits that would come along with something like some kind of digital ID or at least ID verification system. And there are ways to do this cryptographically, which can still obfuscate the person, and have some privacy mechanism built into it. That's not my area of specialty, but I believe there is a solution, to at least address the deep fake fraud that is coming, and the voice fraud that is coming, and all the things that are coming where people's images and voices and likenesses can be used for malicious purposes. But it is a very, very challenging problem technologically and socially. And so it's probably one we're not going to see a solution to anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Chris, unfortunately, we're at the top of our time here. The 50 minutes or so, really flew by. It was a very interesting conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. We covered a lot of fun areas. So thanks for having me on as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, before I let you go, how about you tell my audience, where they can find you if they wanted to reach out, and where they can find your company?
Yeah. I mean, I think really best bet is to go to our website, radicl.com. That's Radicl without the W8, RADICL.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone listening enjoyed this episode. Bye, everyone.